welcome to Enlivening Musings. I'm Crystal.
And I'm Katie.
And today we are talking all about connection. Now, this time it's not necessarily about connection with other people. This is about connection within ourselves. Dun, dun, dun. So, you're probably not new to this concept if you've been listening to us at all. But if you are new to it, let me just start by saying everything's connected. Everything. Every single thing in the entire world. And that whole fun concept of this table's only a table because, all the energy and molecules are like dense enough and all of those types of things. But really, in certain ways, we're almost not separate from anything. And in that regard, sure, we are connected to all of the people as well. But today we're talking about how we're connected to ourselves. So in the body, everything is connected. And so often, especially as a body worker, you see somebody coming in and they're like, well, my shoulder hurts. This is all the pain and this is what happened. And, or I had this injury and yada, da, da, da. So work there. And then I get my hands on them and it's like, ooh, but your hip or your other shoulder or any of this stuff is going on. And it's because it is all connected. And some of that stuff is harder to accept when you're in pain and you really just want to alleviate the pain. And yet it's pretty magical when you pay attention to all of these other parts of the body and how it's all connected and being able to work with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that a lot with people too. Most people come in because they have a specific thing wrong that's bothering them to the point that it's affecting their life. So I would say, okay, well, we're going to, start where the pain is because that's why you're here. But usually as that unfolds, the nice thing is usually people do get some relief. And then it's really cool because then they start to share the other things that bother them that have maybe been bothering them so long they don't even think about it. It's just like always there to the point it starts to feel numb almost.
Oh, for sure.
And then, and it's like an opening of a level of safety of like, oh, well, maybe you could help me with this now too. But yeah, so many people, it's interesting. It's kind of making me think of what is that, when we talk about connection, what is that emotional, spiritual block to that they just don't even want to ask for help in that area or aren't even comfortable sharing that they have pain there?
Well, I think it's even interesting that you say like the concept of becoming numb to something. And so right away, I think of the opposite of connection. I think about disconnect and how often people disconnect from their bodies. And obviously in other episodes, we've talked about how everybody's in their heads and they're not connected to their bodies. So being able to connect with your own body and listen to it is such a huge, huge, huge thing. And then you can start to even see some of those connections and how they're working within your body and being open to that. And I had one other thing to say about the disconnect and that going numb. There are people when I've been working on, I've done like this internal organ balancing stuff. And literally what happens is their awareness gets turned off. And so the first thing I ever have to address to even harmonize anything internal is turning their awareness back on.
Wow.
So it's fun. It's like, okay, let's turn that back on. And then you can actually start tuning in and listening, and your body can take this input that I'm offering, that your body then gets to create the magic and heal itself and all of that fun stuff. So
yeah,
it's huge.
I think with numbness, a way that people can understand it is, because they'll be like, I'll say like, a lot of times there can be a level of numbness. In some teachings, they'll say we have pain where we don't feel. And everyone's like, oh, I feel it,
Right.
But I said, well, yeah, but think about it. How many times have you said, oh, I wish I could just like cut this arm off. It hurts so much. Or, we say those things and our body hears it. And that's a strong mental message that's happening. And it was interesting when I took my last training, from another myofascial release practitioner. One of the techniques she taught is called, she calls it the fascial activation technique, and how it's so amazing and cool on so many levels of how it wakes up the tissue. And I've been using it a lot with people is, like, I'll be like, okay, well, this is their pain spot, their trigger point, whatever. And I'm like, okay, we'll contract it. And they have no idea how to contract it. They don't know how to find it. And it's really cool to watch people, like, you'll feel the areas all around the area contract, but I'm like, nope, right here. And the really cool thing I've noticed with people is a lot of times they have to move, which people are a little bit uncomfortable with because they're like thinking they're getting a quote unquote massage, and now they have to become active and have some role to play in this healing process. And in certain areas, I've had people where I'm like, let's make a little sound with it, get in there more, and how that starts to activate it. It's so cool. And then once they can find it, then they realize how much they've been holding tension there, but it was numb, even though it hurts. So that was like a really, really cool experience to work with. I had told Lori that, this whole week-long class and all the expenses was worth it for that little bit of knowledge. That and just some of the things she taught about how I was able to kind of come into my own level of embodiment of what it truly means to feel grounded and safe in my own heart space while I'm working on people. And that has been super helpful in my practice since I got back. It's just like made such a huge difference. It's been awesome for me to experience, makes it more fun. My patients experience, it's this whole nother level of just like fun.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
I love that.
Coolness. Yeah.
I love that. I
It's
love
so
that.
cool.
I love it. And then that just helps you, like you being connected to the earth. We're all connected to the earth. And then, that helps you transmit that to your client, and you're bringing wholeness and connection to them to become aware of within themselves. And I think that that's huge. And it ties directly into the fact that we as beings are holistic. We are our mind, body, thoughts, emotions, spirit, all of that. And the more ancient healing traditions have always acknowledged that. You've got the Chinese medicine, you've got Ayurveda, and they've always acknowledged, well, where's the emotional component? Where are your thoughts going? What is kind of happening in this whole picture? It's all really connected. And I think that that is so important for everyone listening, to just acknowledge whatever you're going through. Even, I just had like a little skin graft done in my mouth, and that has connection to different things. Each tooth is connected to a different meridian, which is connected to a different emotion. And just it's connected to an old trauma from my near-death experience, and, all that, like connecting the dots. It's something I've really, really loved my whole life. I feel like I've always called myself the untier of knots and the connector of dots, because that's what it is for me when I get into that for my own healing, and if I'm doing that for another person, because it's all just... connected.
Finding that. I know I like the analogy of, like, I'll tell people, like, this is what we're going to be doing in this process when you work with me. It's like pulling up a weed, and we're just going to go slow and just like keep following it. We're not going to try to rip it out fast, because then it's going to break off. And we want to get, that's kind of like almost like the tagline of my practice is we're going to get to the root cause. And I think everyone wants that, but I think they have no idea what that really means. And then we start doing it. And like even, when people think like of Ayurvedic medicine, it's like, okay, well, what should I be eating, or herbs? And I'm like, it's so much more than that.
Right.
When you're balancing the doshas, is that what it's called?
Yep.
And a lot of this, I mean, I'm definitely not an expert in this, but just learning, and it's more like things you can do and embodiments you can do to balance these things that come out of whack. And
right. And it's not even about changing yourself.
Right.
It's about how
like pacifying it. I love that word. How can you like pacify this, which tends to get a little elevated in you? What can we do to nourish that? And so beautiful.
It's funny because then you also say, like the common ones, like your vata's deranged. And for whatever reason, I really like that word too. It's deranged. Like it's gone off the rails a little bit. So you're just bringing it back into harmony, which is a whole nother word that I really, really love is harmony.
Me too.
It's then everything is harmonious and it's working and it's fluid and it can all exist there, but it's in harmony with itself. It's something I still like the word balance, but I do understand the concepts of the tension that can exist within balance. And then I also have a whole new relationship with the word tension and how it's a great thing too. So that's a whole nother episode. But
yes, I have some interesting thoughts on tension versus tightness too that I've thought were really interesting. Again, it's cool to play with definitions and what they mean because it does just kind of unravel this whole new thing.
Perspective.
Yeah. So, one thing we were kind of talking about off air as we were preparing is how, like I was saying, how I explained to people like tissue memory and how that works and so we're all connected.
Right.
Because I think that's a new concept for a lot of people. So I will often say, like, think of how when you, like the smell of something will trigger you or a song, good, bad, or otherwise, it triggers a memory in you. And the same thing can happen to our tissue when we get touched in a certain area or a position in space. The position in space stuff is kind of a deeper level of myofascial release that people can get into. I mean, and it can happen on like the first session, but it definitely takes a level of the person really feeling safe and trusting their body and allowing it to move freely. And what can happen is people will move in when the subconscious feels safe, people will move into this position in space of trauma usually. And I say it's like a combination lock, like lining up. And then it's like releases this tissue memory that was locked down that we didn't even know was there. But when you allow yourself to get into that and have the emotional response to a position in space, it's so incredible. It is, for me, has never, ever been re-traumatizing. It has always allowed me to see the situation in with like a fresh set of eyes, which we're going to talk more about, like belief systems. And just, it's like you can come back to it. And it's not like you're back in time. It's like you're there witnessing it, but now you're wiser and you have this other level of awareness around it that let's say little girl didn't have at the time. So that's when the work gets super powerful and you're just like, it's so freeing. And it usually is like a level of self-forgiveness and being like, and like heart opening and accepting of maybe even accepting the love someone was trying to show for you at the time, but it came off, you weren't able to, or it came off in a way that was confusing to you at the time.
Right.
So it's just really cool of how the body can do that. And if people feel safe and are willing to let the tissue go in this certain position. Yeah.
I have like a million things running through my mind as I'm listening to you. I'm just like, just listen. So I think about that a lot. I feel like I've done some different unwinding work, but then I've also done other things where I've moved my body into specific positions to literally release emotions, and then it also reminds me of being in positions that I've been in, especially in like the accident that I had that was like my near-death experience, and how my body was torqued and twisted and laid, and like even now when I do certain stretches and stuff, it's cool to like feel what all comes up when I'm in that position and allowing it to just be. And I think that's almost maybe a simpler way for anybody who is listening who hasn't had that experience yet, is thinking about what positions do you go in when you're trying to make yourself feel safe?
Yes.
What positions do you go in to avoid pain? What does any of that look like? And paying attention to that brings our awareness to our body and what exactly is happening there.
Yeah.
The other thing I thought about while you were talking with just in saying like tissue memory and thinking about this, it made me think about, and this is kind of silly, but Frozen 2, where Olaf talks about how water has memory.
Yes.
And now I've got a whole flood, pun intended, of ideas coming through. One, which is our bodies are so much water. And so how much that affects things. And two, the water even that we drink has been here for thousands of years and has passed through, what is it, like 7 different animals or something, you know, and then we're like drinking that. I know it sounds disturbing, but it's just the way it works with the way the rain works, and then it gets reabsorbed into the clouds and then it rains and all of that stuff, and just
incredible.
It is so incredible. And so releasing that ancestral trauma, the field of consciousness type trauma that comes from society and everything and anything else, and just all of that and how that exists in time and space as well.
Yeah, it gets pretty deep into some like quantum physics type of situations happening. And I think there's a book called The Fourth Phase of Water, and that's what it talks about.
Oh, I will have to check that out.
Yeah. I mean, you can get really technical and deep into, like I said, the quantum physics of all of this and what, the interconnectedness and the web. I mean, that's all like this quantum physics level of things, but it can be hard to wrap your brain around. I think it comes into more of like an embodiment sort of thing of feeling it, which I've kind of felt in some different ways more recently. And that's been really cool to really feel that web of connection of consciousness.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that then will bring me back more to the physical. And so that idea of like consciousness being in the fascia, right?
Yeah.
And how each facial plane
Yes.
can connect throughout the whole body. So something down in your foot can connect all the way up into your shoulder or down your arm. And it's funny because I've always thought about this more bone structural wise, because my background was getting my bachelor's in science to become a DC. And so like always knowing, you know, the top of the spine and the bottom of the spine are connected and being able to like work it that way. And so if you adjust this, that's going to affect this. If you adjust this, that's going to affect this. Because there are like chiropractors who only work with the very first vertebrae and that helps the entire body align. Or you have things like CST, right? You get your cranial wave going and that affects everything, but it also will address the sacrum. And so this whole top bottom connection of everything has always been so, so powerful to me. And then now when I expand that beyond just the bones and the spine and getting into the musculature and the fascia that wraps around everything and even our organs.
Yep. And our nerves and our blood vessels and everything. So, I mean, it's great when people are looking at the spine and the cranial sacral-system, but that is like just a small part of it. Same thing with the meridians and everything. It's all such a bigger network. And then, you know, you have the energetic level just offside the body, you know, and working on that with people. And, you know, that is super profound. I've had some people say that the top layer can be like the emotional things. And I mean, especially in the pelvic area to hold space right off the body. Whoa.
Right.
You know, that's where so much of that, I think that's where so much of it for women, like that period in time where something starts to happen that they don't want, and then there's no going back. I think that lives in that space for women so much. And I think that's why that's such an important area to treat that right off the body, because that's, you know what I'm saying? Like that's where it all happens. It's like that split second moment of what's happening here. Is this what I want? And that can be in like, you know, sexual realms, doctors, like all these different things, giving birth. Like there's so much energy right at like that. It's like that portal, you know, into, well, gosh, yeah. When you think of like even a baby, they're going from I mean, I kind of feel like when they're in womb, it's like going from one dimension to birthing out to the next, because now they're like eating and breathing and living in a whole new way.
Oh yeah, they went from water to air.
So
what?
I was just like getting lost in my mind of like that, all the intenseness of all of that. And wow. Yeah.
No, I think that's huge. I
Wow.
don't know that I've ever actually really thought about that. I mean, I've thought about the different layers of our energy from our body, and sometimes, just the emotions residing right outside. But the concept that you're talking about right now with that split second before something happens, like I instantly had like memories come to me of, oh, there I would have said no and I said yes, and or whatever. And how many people have experienced that, and not even saying that those were traumatic experiences, but they still hold power and give you then more awareness as to what you would love in the future and what you would do now, now as you. Oh, I would have said, no, thanks for that. And let's do this instead, please. Or whatever.
Yeah. Which again, it like always all comes down to just like a level of like self-forgiveness of like, and that's what I say to people a lot during a session. If they're having an emotional experience, I'm like, you did the best you could at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And letting yourself, even if people are listening, like just hearing that statement and feel how your body feels when, you might be feeling a memory right now, and just remind yourself you did the best you could at the time to survive.
Right.
And we all have those moments. Like the last training I went to, we did an exercise of connecting the head to the heart. And I was really struggling with it. And then like I had a super profound experience, and it was like, whoa, of times where I didn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
My heart felt one way, my head said the other thing. And I listened to my head and not my heart. And how that was really at the root of some deep issues for me, of some experiences. And just being able to forgive myself for that moment of the time I didn't listen to my heart, and how that unthawed, like physically unthawed so much restriction around the back of my rib cage. And I literally could feel during the class, like during the experience, and then sharing some things, like a physical warmth spreading through that area of my body.
Yeah.
And that's just, it was so incredible. And it was kind of this emotional thing that I had to unlock, because I knew I felt this tension in my body. And even after doing this work for 10 years, a therapist for 20, I was like, okay, well now I know that's there. I really knew it was there, but I really knew it was there maybe 6 months ago. But I just was like, okay, now what? I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know how to access that. And then it was this time, that time. And I think for people just to know that too, like you don't have to know how to get there. Just trust the process. Keep coming back to your body. Just trust it. Sometimes it's chaos. And it's like, I always been saying lately, it's like when you're cleaning out your storage room and halfway through you're like, oh my God, like this is like a total mess right now. Ugh. And you kind of just want to walk away, but it's like, that's when it's just like, keep showing up, keep getting there. You're not going to always know the way, but your body will, the tissue will.
Yeah. I love that, especially because so often we as a society want a really quick fix, and it's just not always like that. This whole journey of discovering yourself and what's going to help you live fully lit up and all of that stuff, it's always a journey. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be moments where things maybe even feel more disconnected. And so you just bring that one step towards connection, that one step towards listening to your body, and then letting it guide you in that way. And I think that's so cool to hear about that connection and how it softened that other area and brought that circulation of probably physical circulation and energetic, where you could feel that warmth and
trust
everything.
My heart again. And now I can work from my heart space. And when I'm working on people, I'll say, okay, let me drop into my heart.
Yeah.
And now you can follow my lead. And they can. And whenever I'm working on someone, if I feel myself forcing a little bit, okay, let me come into my heart. Let me call down my higher self, my guides, whoever, whatever your belief system is, whatever it is above you. Most of us, I think, feel that quote unquote higher power, higher sense, whether it's ourself or something else. And knowing like that's okay, so that's where I'm drawing this energy from. It's not just coming within me. Bringing love to myself first and letting that flow through me and how that affects people. And they feel it.
Right.
And they're able to start to let go of their holding patterns and their guarding or just notice their holding patterns.
Right, because it starts there.
You have to. So many people have no idea. I had so many other layers that unlocked even recently for me that I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
I love it. So let us know what you take away from all of this. Maybe new connections that you didn't know before and all of that stuff. You can check us out at Enlivening Musings on Instagram and send us your takeaways because we love hearing them. And when you state it out loud, you own it more for yourself. And we want that for you. All right. Enjoy life.
Bye.
Thanks for musing about with us. If you loved all of that and are looking for more, you can find Crystal's classes at aliveness.academy or enhanceyoutv.com. Or, of course, her crystalpleasurefairy.com, which the Crystal Pleasure Fairy, which will just be Pleasure Fairy app, will be in app stores soon, so you can invite more pleasure into your life. And Katie, you can find at wellnesswithkatie.com. Enjoy.